Socrates, let me ask you whether better natures are likely to be found in noble races or not in noble races. Alcibiades, clearly in noble races. Socrates, are not those who are well-born and well-bred most likely to be perfect in virtue? Alcibiades, certainly. Socrates, then let us compare our antecedents with those of the Lacedaemonian and Persian kings. Are they inferior to us in descent? Have we not heard that the former are sprung from Pericles, and the latter from Achaemenes, and that the race of Pericles and the race of Achaemenes go back to Perseus, son of Zeus? Alcibiades, why, so does mine go back to Eurysaces, and he to Zeus. Socrates, and mine, noble Alcibiades, to Daedalus, and he to Hephaestus, son of Zeus. But, for all that, we are far inferior to them. For they are descended from Zeus, through a line of kings, either kings of Argos and Lacedaemon, or kings of Persia, a country which the descendants of Achaemenes have always possessed, besides being at various times sovereigns of Asia, as they now are, whereas, we and our fathers were but private persons. How ridiculous would you be thought if you were to make a display of your ancestors and of Salamis, the island of Eurysaces, or of Aegina, the habitation of the still more ancient Aeacus, before Artaxerxes, son of Xerxes. You should consider how inferior we are to them both in the derivation of our birth and in other particulars. Did you never observe how great is the property of the Spartan kings? And their wives are under the guardianship of the Ephori, who are public officers and watch over them, in order to preserve as far as possible the purity of the Heraclid blood. Still greater is the difference among the Persians, for no one entertains a suspicion that the father of a prince of Persia can be any one but the king. Such is the awe which invests the person of the queen, that any other guard is needless. And when the heir of the kingdom is born, all the subjects of the king feast, and the day of his birth is forever afterwards kept as a holiday and time of sacrifice by all Asia, whereas, when you and I were born, Alcibiades, as the comic poet says, the neighbors hardly knew of the important event. After the birth of the royal child, he is tended, not by a good-for-nothing woman nurse, but by the best of the royal eunuchs, who are charged with the care of him, and especially with the fashioning and right formation of his limbs, in order that he may be as shapely as possible, which being their calling, they are held in great honor. And when the young prince is 7 years old he is put upon a horse and taken to the riding masters, and begins to go out hunting. And at 14 years of age he is handed over to the royal schoolmasters, as they are termed. These are 4 chosen men, reputed to be the best among the Persians of a certain age, and one of them is the wisest, another the justest, a third the most temperate, and a fourth the most valiant. The first instructs him in the Magianism of Zoroaster, the son of Oromasis, which is the worship of the gods, and teaches him also the duties of his royal office. The second, who is the justest, teaches him always to speak the truth. The third, or most temperate, forbids him to allow any pleasure to be lord over him, that he may be accustomed to be a freeman and king indeed, lord of himself first, and not a slave. The most valiant trains him to be bold and fearless, telling him that if he fears he is to deem himself a slave, whereas Pericles gave you, Alcibiades, for a tutor Zopyrus the Thracian, a slave of his who was past all other work. I might enlarge on the nurture and education of your rivals, but that would be tedious, and what I have said is a sufficient sample of what remains to be said. I have only to remark, by way of contrast, that no one cares about your birth or nurture or education, or, I may say, about that of any other Athenian, unless he has a lover who looks after him. And if you cast an eye on the wealth, the luxury, the garments with their flowing trains, the anointings with myrrh, the multitudes of attendants, and all the other bravery of the Persians, you will be ashamed when you discern your own inferiority, or if you look at the temperance and orderliness and ease and grace and magnanimity and courage and endurance and love of toil and desire of glory and ambition of the Lacedaemonians, in all these respects you will see that you are but a child in comparison of them. Even in the matter of wealth, if you value yourself upon that, I must reveal to you how you stand, for if you form an estimate of the wealth of the Lacedaemonians, you will see that our possessions fall far short of theirs. For no one here can compete with them either in the extent and fertility of their own and the Messenian territory, or in the number of their slaves, and especially of the Helots, or of their horses, or of the animals which feed on the Messenian pastures. But I have said enough of this, and as to gold and silver, there is more of them in Lacedaemon than in all the rest of Hellas, for during many generations gold has been always flowing into them from the whole Hellenic world, and often from the barbarian also, and never going out, as in the fable of Aesop the fox said to the lion, the prints of the feet of those going in are distinct enough, but whoever saw the trace of money going out of Lacedaemon? And therefore you may safely infer that the inhabitants are the richest of the Hellenes in gold and silver, and that their kings are the richest of them, for they have a larger share of these things, and they have also a tribute paid to them which is very considerable. Yet the Spartan wealth, though great in comparison of the wealth of the other Hellenes, is as nothing in comparison of that of the Persians and their kings. Why, I have been informed by a credible person who went up to the king, at Susa, that he passed through a large tract of excellent land, extending for nearly a day's journey, which the people of the country called the Queen's Girdle, and another, which they called her Vale, and several other fair and fertile districts, which were reserved for the adornment of the Queen, and are named after her several habiliments. Now, I cannot help thinking to myself, what if someone were to go to Amestris, the wife of Xerxes and mother of Artaxerxes, and say to her, there is a certain Dinomache, whose whole wardrobe is not worth 50 minae, and that will be more than the value, and she has a son who is possessed of a 300-acre patch at Urcha, and he has a mind to go to war with your son, would she not wonder to what this Alcibiades trusts for success in the conflict? He must rely, she would say to herself, upon his training and wisdom. These are the things which Hellenes value. And if she heard that this Alcibiades who is making the attempt is not as yet 20 years old, and is wholly uneducated, and when his lover tells him that he ought to get education and training first, and then go and fight the king, he refuses, and says that he is well enough as he is, would she not be amazed, and ask on what, then, does the youth rely? And if we replied, he relies on his beauty and stature and birth, and mental endowments, she would think that we were mad, Alcibiades, when she compared the advantages which you possess with those of her own people. And I believe that even Lampido, the daughter of Leotychides, the wife of Archidamus and mother of Agis, all of whom were kings, would have the same feeling, if, in your present uneducated state, you were to turn your thoughts against her son, she too would be equally astonished. But how disgraceful, that we should not have as high a notion of what is required in us as our enemies' wives and mothers have of the qualities which are required in their assailants. O my friend, be persuaded by me, and hear the Delphian inscription, know thyself, not the men whom you think, but these kings are our rivals, and we can only overcome them by pains and skill. And if you fail in the required qualities, you will fail also in becoming renowned among Hellenes and barbarians, which you seem to desire more than any other man ever desired anything. Alcibiades, I entirely believe you, but what are the sort of pains which are required? Socrates, can you tell me? Socrates, yes, I can, but we must take counsel together concerning the manner in which both of us may be most improved. For what I am telling you of the necessity of education applies to myself as well as to you, and there is only one point in which I have an advantage over you. Alcibiades, what is that? Socrates, I have a guardian who is better and wiser than your guardian, Pericles. Alcibiades, who is he, Socrates? Socrates, God, Alcibiades, who up to this day has not allowed me to converse with you, and he inspires in me the faith that I am especially designed to bring you to honor. Alcibiades, you are jesting, Socrates. Socrates, perhaps, at any rate, I am right in saying that all men greatly need pains and care, and you and I above all men. Alcibiades, you are not far wrong about me. Socrates, and certainly not about myself. Alcibiades, but what can we do? Socrates, there must be no hesitation or cowardice, my friend. Alcibiades, that would not become us, Socrates. Socrates, no, indeed, and we ought to take counsel together, for do we not wish to be as good as possible? Alcibiades, we do. Socrates, in what sort of virtue? Alcibiades, plainly, in the virtue of good men. Socrates, who are good in what? Alcibiades, those, clearly, who are good in the management of affairs. Socrates, what sort of affairs? Equestrian affairs? Alcibiades, certainly not. Socrates, you mean that about them we should have recourse to horsemen? Alcibiades, yes. Socrates, well, naval affairs? Alcibiades, no. Socrates, you mean that we should have recourse to sailors about them? Alcibiades, yes. Socrates, then what affairs? And who do them? Alcibiades, the affairs which occupy Athenian gentlemen. Socrates, and when you speak of gentlemen, do you mean the wise or the unwise? Alcibiades, the wise. Socrates, and a man is good in respect of that in which he is wise? Alcibiades, yes. Socrates, and evil in respect of that in which he is unwise? Alcibiades, certainly. Socrates, the shoemaker, for example, is wise in respect of the making of shoes? Alcibiades, yes. Socrates, then he is good in that? Alcibiades, he is. Socrates, but in respect of the making of garments he is unwise? Alcibiades, yes. Socrates, then in that he is bad? Alcibiades, yes. Socrates, then upon this view of the matter the same man is good and also bad? Alcibiades, true. Socrates, but would you say that the good are the same as the bad? Alcibiades, certainly not. Socrates, then whom do you call the good? Alcibiades, I mean by the good those who are able to rule in the city. Socrates, not, surely, over horses? Alcibiades, certainly not. Socrates, but over men? Alcibiades, yes. Socrates, when they are sick? Alcibiades, no. Socrates, or on a voyage? Alcibiades, no. Socrates, or reaping the harvest? Alcibiades, no. Socrates, when they are doing something or nothing? Alcibiades, when they are doing something, I should say. Socrates, I wish that you would explain to me what this something is. Alcibiades, when they are having dealings with one another, and using one another's services, as we citizens do in our daily life. Socrates, those of whom you speak are ruling over men who are using the services of other men? Alcibiades, yes. Socrates, are they ruling over the signal men who give the time to the rowers? Alcibiades, no, they are not. Socrates, that would be the office of the pilot? Alcibiades, yes. Socrates, but, perhaps you mean that they rule over flute players, who lead the singers and use the services of the dancers. Alcibiades, certainly not. Socrates, that would be the business of the teacher of the chorus? Alcibiades, yes. Socrates, then what is the meaning of being able to rule over men who use other men? Alcibiades, I mean that they rule over men who have common rights of citizenship, and dealings with one another. Socrates, and what sort of an art is this? Suppose that I ask you again, as I did just now, what art makes men know how to rule over their fellow sailors, how would you answer? Alcibiades, the art of the pilot. Socrates, and, if I may recur to another old instance, what art enables them to rule over their fellow singers? Alcibiades, the art of the teacher of the chorus, which you were just now mentioning. Socrates, and what do you call the art of fellow citizens? Alcibiades, I should say, good counsel, Socrates. Socrates, and is the art of the pilot evil counsel? Alcibiades, no. Socrates, but good counsel? Alcibiades, yes, that is what I should say, good counsel, of which the aim is the preservation of the voyagers. Socrates, true. And what is the aim of that other good counsel of which you speak? Alcibiades, the aim is the better order and preservation of the city. Socrates, and what is that of which the absence or presence improves and preserves the order of the city? Suppose you were to ask me, what is that of which the presence or absence improves or preserves the order of the body? I should reply, the presence of health and the absence of disease. You would say the same? Alcibiades, yes. Socrates, and if you were to ask me the same question about the eyes, I should reply in the same way, the presence of sight and the absence of blindness, or about the ears, I should reply, that they were improved and were in better case, when deafness was absent, and hearing was present in them. Alcibiades, true. Socrates, and what would you say of a state? What is that by the presence or absence of which the state is improved and better managed and ordered? Alcibiades, I should say, Socrates, the presence of friendship and the absence of hatred and division. Socrates, and do you mean by friendship agreement or disagreement? Alcibiades, agreement. Socrates, what art makes cities agree about numbers? Alcibiades, arithmetic. Socrates, and private individuals? Alcibiades, the same. Socrates, and what art makes each individual agree with himself? Alcibiades, the same. Socrates, and what art makes each of us agree with himself about the comparative length of the span and of the cubit? Does not the art of measure? Alcibiades, yes. Socrates, individuals are agreed with one another about this, and states, equally? Alcibiades, yes. Socrates, and the same holds of the balance? Alcibiades, true. Socrates, but what is the other agreement of which you speak, and about what? What art can give that agreement? And does that which gives it to the state give it also to the individual, so as to make him consistent with himself and with another? Alcibiades, I should suppose so. Socrates, but what is the nature of the agreement? Answer, and faint not. Alcibiades, I mean to say that there should be such friendship and agreement as exists between an affectionate father and mother and their son, or between brothers, or between husband and wife. Socrates, but can a man, Alcibiades, agree with a woman about the spinning of wool, which she understands and he does not? Alcibiades, no, truly. Socrates, nor has he any need, for spinning is a female accomplishment. Alcibiades, yes. Socrates, and would a woman agree with a man about the science of arms, which she has never learned? Alcibiades, certainly not. Socrates, I suppose that the use of arms would be regarded by you as a male accomplishment? Alcibiades, it would. Socrates, then, upon your view, women and men have two sorts of knowledge? Alcibiades, certainly. Socrates, then in their knowledge there is no agreement of women and men? Alcibiades, there is not. Socrates, nor can there be friendship, if friendship is agreement? Alcibiades, plainly not. Socrates, then women are not loved by men when they do their own work? Alcibiades, I suppose not. Socrates, nor men by women when they do their own work? Alcibiades, no. Socrates, nor are states well administered, when individuals do their own work. Alcibiades, I should rather think, Socrates, that the reverse is the truth. Socrates, what? Do you mean to say that states are well administered when friendship is absent, the presence of which, as we were saying, alone secures their good order? Alcibiades, but I should say that there is friendship among them, for this very reason, that the two parties respectively do their own work. Socrates, that was not what you were saying before, and what do you mean now by affirming that friendship exists when there is no agreement? How can there be agreement about matters which the one party knows, and of which the other is in ignorance? Alcibiades, impossible. Socrates, and when individuals are doing their own work, are they doing what is just or unjust? Alcibiades, what is just, certainly. Socrates, and when individuals do what is just in the state, is there no friendship among them? Alcibiades, I suppose that there must be, Socrates. Socrates, then what do you mean by this friendship or agreement about which we must be wise and discreet in order that we may be good men? I cannot make out where it exists or among whom, according to you, the same persons may sometimes have it, and sometimes not. Alcibiades, but, indeed, Socrates, I do not know what I am saying, and I have long been, unconsciously to myself, in a most disgraceful state. Socrates, nevertheless, cheer up, at 50, if you had discovered your deficiency, you would have been too old, and the time for taking care of yourself would have passed away, but yours is just the age at which the discovery should be made. Alcibiades, and what should he do, Socrates, who would make the discovery? Socrates, answer questions, Alcibiades, and that is a process which, by the grace of God, if I may put any faith in my oracle, will be very improving to both of us. Alcibiades, if I can be improved by answering, I will answer. Socrates, and first of all, that we may not peradventure be deceived by appearances, fancying, perhaps, that we are taking care of ourselves when we are not, what is the meaning of a man taking care of himself? And when does he take care? Does he take care of himself when he takes care of what belongs to him? Alcibiades, I should think so. Socrates, when does a man take care of his feet? Does he not take care of them when he takes care of that which belongs to his feet? Alcibiades, I do not understand. Socrates, let me take the hand as an illustration, does not a ring belong to the finger, and to the finger only? Alcibiades, yes. Socrates, and the shoe in like manner to the foot? Alcibiades, yes. Socrates, and when we take care of our shoes, do we not take care of our feet? Alcibiades, I do not comprehend, Socrates. Socrates, but you would admit, Alcibiades, that to take proper care of a thing is a correct expression? Alcibiades, yes. Socrates, and taking proper care means improving? Alcibiades: yes. Socrates: and what is the art which improves our shoes? Alcibiades: shoemaking. Socrates: then by shoemaking we take care of our shoes? Alcibiades: yes. Socrates: and do we by shoemaking take care of our feet, or by some other art which improves the feet? Alcibiades: by some other art. Socrates: and the same art improves the feet which improves the rest of the body? Alcibiades: very true. Socrates: which is gymnastic? Alcibiades: certainly. Socrates: then by gymnastic we take care of our feet, and by shoemaking of that which belongs to our feet? Alcibiades: very true. Socrates: and by gymnastic we take care of our hands, and by the art of graving rings of that which belongs to our hands? Alcibiades: yes. Socrates: and by gymnastic we take care of the body, and by the art of weaving and the other arts we take care of the things of the body? Alcibiades: clearly. Socrates: then the art which takes care of each thing is different from that which takes care of the belongings of each thing? Alcibiades: true. Socrates: then in taking care of what belongs to you, you do not take care of yourself? Alcibiades: certainly not. Socrates: for the art which takes care of our belongings appears not to be the same as that which takes care of ourselves? Alcibiades: clearly not. Socrates: and now let me ask you, what is the art with which we take care of ourselves? Alcibiades: I cannot say. Socrates: at any rate, thus much has been admitted, that the art is not one which makes any of our possessions, but which makes ourselves better. Alcibiades: true. Socrates: but should we ever have known what art makes a shoe better, if we did not know a shoe? Alcibiades: impossible. Socrates: nor should we know what art makes a ring better, if we did not know a ring? Alcibiades: that is true. Socrates: and can we ever know what art makes a man better, if we do not know what we are ourselves? Alcibiades: impossible. Socrates: and is self-knowledge such an easy thing, and was he to be lightly esteemed who inscribed the text on the temple at Delphi? Or is self-knowledge a difficult thing, which few are able to attain? Alcibiades: at times I fancy, Socrates, that anybody can know himself, at other times the task appears to be very difficult. Socrates: but whether easy or difficult, Alcibiades, still there is no other way. Knowing what we are, we shall know how to take care of ourselves, and if we are ignorant we shall not know. Alcibiades: that is true. Socrates: well, then, let us see in what way the self-existent can be discovered by us, that will give us a chance of discovering our own existence, which otherwise we can never know. Alcibiades: you say truly. Socrates: come, now, I beseech you, tell me with whom you are conversing, with whom but with me. Alcibiades: yes. Socrates: as I am, with you? Alcibiades: yes. Socrates: that is to say, I, Socrates, am talking? Alcibiades: yes. Socrates: and Alcibiades is my hearer? Alcibiades: yes. Socrates: and I in talking use words? Alcibiades: certainly. Socrates: and talking and using words have, I suppose, the same meaning? Alcibiades: to be sure. Socrates: and the user is not the same as the thing which he uses? Alcibiades: what do you mean? Socrates: I will explain. The shoemaker, for example, uses a square tool, and a circular tool, and other tools for cutting? Alcibiades: yes. Socrates: but the tool is not the same as the cutter and user of the tool? Alcibiades: of course not. Socrates: and in the same way the instrument of the harper is to be distinguished from the harper himself? Alcibiades: it is. Socrates: now the question which I asked was whether you conceive the user to be always different from that which he uses? Alcibiades: I do. Socrates: then what shall we say of the shoemaker? Does he cut with his tools only or with his hands? Alcibiades: with his hands as well. Socrates: he uses his hands too? Alcibiades: yes. Socrates: and does he use his eyes in cutting leather? Alcibiades: he does. Socrates: and we admit that the user is not the same with the things which he uses? Alcibiades: yes. Socrates: then the shoemaker and the harper are to be distinguished from the hands and feet which they use? Alcibiades: clearly. Socrates: and does not a man use the whole body? Alcibiades: certainly. Socrates: and that which uses is different from that which is used? Alcibiades: true. Socrates: then a man is not the same as his own body? Alcibiades: that is the inference. Socrates: what is he, then? Alcibiades: I cannot say. Socrates: nay, you can say that he is the user of the body. Alcibiades: yes. Socrates: and the user of the body is the soul? Alcibiades: yes, the soul. Socrates: and the soul rules? Alcibiades: yes. Socrates: let me make an assertion which will, I think, be universally admitted. Alcibiades: what is it? Socrates: that man is one of three things. Alcibiades: what are they? Socrates: soul, body, or both together forming a whole. Alcibiades: certainly. Socrates: but did we not say that the actual ruling principle of the body is man? Alcibiades: yes, we did. Socrates: and does the body rule over itself? Alcibiades: certainly not. Socrates: it is subject, as we were saying? Alcibiades: yes. Socrates: then that is not the principle which we are seeking? Alcibiades: it would seem not. Socrates: but may we say that the union of the two rules over the body, and consequently that this is man? Alcibiades: very likely. Socrates: the most unlikely of all things, for if one of the members is subject, the two united cannot possibly rule. Alcibiades: true. Socrates: but since neither the body, nor the union of the two, is man, either man has no real existence, or the soul is man. Alcibiades: just so. Socrates: is anything more required to prove that the soul is man? Alcibiades: certainly not, the proof is, I think, quite sufficient. Socrates: and if the proof, although not perfect, be sufficient, we shall be satisfied. More precise proof will be supplied when we have discovered that which we were led to omit, from a fear that the inquiry would be too much protracted. Alcibiades: what was that? Socrates: what I meant, when I said that absolute existence must be first considered, but now, instead of absolute existence, we have been considering the nature of individual existence, and this may, perhaps, be sufficient, for surely there is nothing which may be called more properly ourselves than the soul? Alcibiades: there is nothing. Socrates: then we may truly conceive that you and I are conversing with one another, soul to soul? Alcibiades: Very true. Socrates, and that is just what I was saying before, that I, Socrates, am not arguing or talking with the face of Alcibiades, but with the real Alcibiades, or in other words, with his soul. Alcibiades, true. Socrates, then he who bids a man know himself, would have him know his soul? Alcibiades, that appears to be true. Socrates, he whose knowledge only extends to the body, knows the things of a man, and not the man himself? Alcibiades, that is true. Socrates, then neither the physician regarded as a physician, nor the trainer regarded as a trainer, knows himself? Alcibiades, he does not. Socrates, the husbandman and the other craftsmen are very far from knowing themselves, for they would seem not even to know their own belongings. When regarded in relation to the arts which they practice, they are even further removed from self-knowledge, for they only know the belongings of the body, which minister to the body. Alcibiades, that is true. Socrates, then if temperance is the knowledge of self, in respect of his art none of them is temperate? Alcibiades, I agree. Socrates, and this is the reason why their arts are accounted vulgar, and are not such as a good man would practice. Alcibiades, quite true. Socrates, again, he who cherishes his body cherishes not himself, but what belongs to him. Alcibiades, that is true. Socrates, but he who cherishes his money, cherishes neither himself nor his belongings, but is in a stage yet further removed from himself? Alcibiades, I agree. Socrates, then the money-maker has really ceased to be occupied with his own concerns? Alcibiades, true. Socrates, and if anyone has fallen in love with the person of Alcibiades, he loves not Alcibiades, but the belongings of Alcibiades? Alcibiades, true. Socrates, but he who loves your soul is the true lover? Alcibiades, that is the necessary inference. Socrates, the lover of the body goes away when the flower of youth fades? Alcibiades, true. Socrates, but he who loves the soul goes not away, as long as the soul follows after virtue? Alcibiades, yes. Socrates, and I am the lover who goes not away, but remains with you, when you are no longer young and the rest are gone. Alcibiades, yes, Socrates, and therein you do well, and I hope that you will remain. Socrates, then you must try to look your best. Alcibiades, I will. Socrates, the fact is, that there is only one lover of Alcibiades the son of Cleinias, there neither is nor ever has been seemingly any other, and he is his darling, Socrates, the son of Sophroniscus and Phaenaret. Alcibiades, true. Socrates, and did you not say, that if I had not spoken first, you were on the point of coming to me, and inquiring why I only remained? Alcibiades, that is true. Socrates, the reason was that I loved you for your own sake, whereas other men love what belongs to you, and your beauty, which is not you, is fading away, just as your true self is beginning to bloom. And I will never desert you, if you are not spoiled and deformed by the Athenian people, for the danger which I most fear is that you will become a lover of the people and will be spoiled by them. Many a noble Athenian has been ruined in this way. For the Demus of the great-hearted Erechtheus is of a fair countenance, but you should see him naked, wherefore observe the caution which I give you. Alcibiades, what caution? Socrates, practice yourself, sweet friend, in learning what you ought to know, before you enter on politics, and then you will have an antidote which will keep you out of harm's way. Alcibiades, good advice, Socrates, but I wish that you would explain to me in what way I am to take care of myself. Socrates, have we not made an advance? For we are at any rate tolerably well agreed as to what we are, and there is no longer any danger, as we once feared, that we might be taking care not of ourselves, but of something which is not ourselves. Alcibiades, that is true. Socrates, and the next step will be to take care of the soul, and look to that? Alcibiades, certainly. Socrates, leaving the care of our bodies and of our properties to others? Alcibiades, very good. Socrates, but how can we have a perfect knowledge of the things of the soul, for if we know them, then I suppose we shall know ourselves. Can we really be ignorant of the excellent meaning of the Delphian inscription, of which we were just now speaking? Alcibiades, what have you in your thoughts, Socrates? Socrates, I will tell you what I suspect to be the meaning and lesson of that inscription. Let me take an illustration from sight, which I imagine to be the only one suitable to my purpose. Alcibiades, what do you mean? Socrates, consider, if someone were to say to the eye, see thyself, as you might say to a man, know thyself, what is the nature and meaning of this precept? Would not his meaning be, that the eye should look at that in which it would see itself? Alcibiades, clearly. Socrates, and what are the objects in looking at which we see ourselves? Alcibiades, clearly, Socrates, in looking at mirrors and the like. Socrates, very true, and is there not something of the nature of a mirror in our own eyes? Alcibiades, certainly. Socrates, did you ever observe that the face of the person looking into the eye of another is reflected as in a mirror, and in the visual organ which is over against him, and which is called the pupil, there is a sort of image of the person looking? Alcibiades, that is quite true. Socrates, then the eye, looking at another eye, and at that in the eye which is most perfect, and which is the instrument of vision, will there see itself? Alcibiades, that is evident. Socrates, but looking at anything else either in man or in the world, and not to what resembles this, it will not see itself? Alcibiades, very true. Socrates, then if the eye is to see itself, it must look at the eye, and at that part of the eye where sight which is the virtue of the eye resides? Alcibiades, true. Socrates, and if the soul, my dear Alcibiades, is ever to know herself, must she not look at the soul, and especially at that part of the soul in which her virtue resides, and to any other which is like this? Alcibiades, I agree, Socrates. Socrates, and do we know of any part of our souls more divine than that which has to do with wisdom and knowledge? Alcibiades, there is none. Socrates, then this is that part of the soul which resembles the divine, and he who looks at this and at the whole class of things divine, will be most likely to know himself? Alcibiades, clearly. Socrates, and self-knowledge we agree to be wisdom? Alcibiades, true. Socrates, but if we have no self-knowledge and no wisdom, can we ever know our own good and evil? Alcibiades, how can we, Socrates? Socrates, you mean, that if you did not know Alcibiades, there would be no possibility of your knowing that what belonged to Alcibiades was really his? Alcibiades, it would be quite impossible. Socrates, nor should we know that we were the persons to whom anything belonged, if we did not know ourselves? Alcibiades, how could we? Socrates, and if we did not know our own belongings, neither should we know the belongings of our belongings? Alcibiades, clearly not. Socrates, then we were not altogether right in acknowledging just now that a man may know what belongs to him and yet not know himself, nay, rather he cannot even know the belongings of his belongings, for the discernment of the things of self, and of the things which belong to the things of self, appear all to be the business of the same man, and of the same art. Alcibiades, so much may be supposed. Socrates, and he who knows not the things which belong to himself, will in like manner be ignorant of the things which belong to others? Alcibiades, very true. Socrates, and if he knows not the affairs of others, he will not know the affairs of states? Alcibiades, certainly not. Socrates, then such a man can never be a statesman? Alcibiades, he cannot. Socrates, nor an economist? Alcibiades, he cannot. Socrates, he will not know what he is doing? Alcibiades, he will not. Socrates, and will not he who is ignorant fall into error? Alcibiades, assuredly. Socrates, and if he falls into error, will he not fail both in his public and private capacity? Alcibiades, yes, indeed. Socrates, and failing, will he not be miserable? Alcibiades, very. Socrates, and what will become of those for whom he is acting? Alcibiades, they will be miserable also. Socrates, then he who is not wise and good cannot be happy? Alcibiades, he cannot. Socrates, the bad, then, are miserable? Alcibiades, yes, very. Socrates, and if so, not he who has riches, but he who has wisdom, is delivered from his misery? Alcibiades, clearly. Socrates, cities, then, if they are to be happy, do not want walls, or triremes, or docks, or numbers, or size. Alcibiades, without virtue? Alcibiades, indeed they do not. Socrates, and you must give the citizens virtue, if you mean to administer their affairs rightly or nobly. Alcibiades, certainly. Socrates, but can a man give that which he has not? Alcibiades, impossible. Socrates, then you or any one who means to govern and superintend, not only himself and the things of himself, but the state and the things of the state, must in the first place acquire virtue. Alcibiades, that is true. Socrates, you have not therefore to obtain power or authority, in order to enable you to do what you wish for yourself and the state, but justice and wisdom. Alcibiades, clearly. Socrates, you and the state, if you act wisely and justly, will act according to the will of God? Alcibiades, certainly. Socrates, as I was saying before, you will look only at what is bright and divine, and act with a view to them? Alcibiades, yes. Socrates, in that mirror you will see and know yourselves and your own good? Alcibiades, yes. Socrates, and so you will act rightly and well? Alcibiades, yes. Socrates, in which case, I will be security for your happiness. Alcibiades, I accept the security. Socrates, but if you act unrighteously, your eye will turn to the dark and godless, and being in darkness and ignorance of yourselves, you will probably do deeds of darkness. Alcibiades, very possibly. Socrates, for if a man, my dear Alcibiades, has the power to do what he likes, but has no understanding, what is likely to be the result, either to him as an individual or to the state? For example, if he be sick and is able to do what he likes, not having the mind of a physician, having moreover tyrannical power, and no one daring to reprove him, what will happen to him? Will he not be likely to have his constitution ruined? Alcibiades, that is true. Socrates, or again, in a ship, if a man having the power to do what he likes, has no intelligence or skill in navigation, do you see what will happen to him and to his fellow sailors? Alcibiades, yes, I see that they will all perish. Socrates, and in like manner, in a state, and where there is any power and authority which is wanting in virtue, will not misfortune, in like manner, ensue? Alcibiades, certainly. Socrates, not tyrannical power, then, my good Alcibiades, should be the aim either of individuals or states, if they would be happy, but virtue. Alcibiades, that is true. Socrates, and before they have virtue, to be commanded by a superior is better for men as well as for children? Alcibiades, that is evident. Socrates, and that which is better is also nobler? Alcibiades, true. Socrates, and what is nobler is more becoming? Alcibiades, certainly. Socrates, then to the bad man slavery is more becoming, because better? Alcibiades, true. Socrates, then vice is only suited to a slave? Alcibiades, yes. Socrates, and virtue to a freeman? Alcibiades, yes. Socrates, and, O my friend, is not the condition of a slave to be avoided? Alcibiades, certainly, Socrates. Socrates, and are you now conscious of your own state? And do you know whether you are a freeman or not? Alcibiades, I think that I am very conscious indeed of my own state. Socrates, and do you know how to escape out of a state which I do not even like to name to my beauty? Alcibiades, yes, I do. Socrates, how? Alcibiades, by your help, Socrates. Socrates, that is not well said, Alcibiades. Alcibiades, what ought I to have said? Socrates, by the help of God. Alcibiades, I agree, and I further say, that our relations are likely to be reversed. From this day forward, I must and will follow you as you have followed me, I will be the disciple, and you shall be my master. Socrates, oh that is rare. My love breeds another love, and so like the stork I shall be cherished by the bird whom I have hatched. Alcibiades, strange, but true, and henceforward I shall begin to think about justice. Socrates, and I hope that you will persist, although I have fears, not because I doubt you, but I see the power of the state, which may be too much for both of us.